Good morning. Did you learn anything interesting about your energy flows yesterday? Mary Beth?
Yeah, I mean, it was just interesting how I had more vitality for sitting in the morning than I did in the evening sit. That was one observation. And another one this morning is how much I count on the bird noises for vitality.
And instead we have the garbage trucks, right? And
Yeah, I noticed in my work, when I was able to go outside, the times when I could walk in the courtyard or walk outside, that really energized me.
yeah, it's amazing how even a little bit of nature will do that, right?
We have Sandra online.
Sandra?
Good morning. So for me, it was very interesting to notice that when when my energy is down, but normally it's when something worries me. So what thing yesterday happened is how much is this again knowledge about the impact with others? Like even though my energy was in the worry part, when I started all my patients yesterday without knowing where I was, it was this cheering me out, telling me things. And and that was like, oh wow, is that the impact? And they didn't know where I was.
Right.
But it's the way that you hear it, but receiving that. I think for me is like because we can hear it, but if we are in our own conditions where we are not able to receive it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not available.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kim?
I had a really kind of a breakthrough last night when Peg and I were talking about Buddhist action.
There's the dialogue here that has to. There we go. Okay.
Okay, I had a real breakthrough last night when we were talking about Buddhist action now and thinking and then sitting the whole morning with vigor and waking up to vigor and realizing vigor's not the problem. But doing the appropriate action is the problem.
Yeah.
And then I thought about maybe 40 years ago, I had a wonderful student who got a full scholarship to Washington University and went there, and on her first exam in archaeology, which was her major, she got like a C minus, and she went to see the teacher, and he said, "You must have been studying in the wrong way."
Mm.
And that has meant so much to me.
Mm-hmm.
And she turned out to be a dean's list and everything.
Right.
But wondering what is the appropriate action?
Mm-hmm.
And it's so easy to justify what we're doing because we're working so hard.
Yeah.
So that was really great what you said last night, that maybe we're not doing the right thing
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to we're not working hard enough. And then thinking about nationally, the problem isn't that we have leadership without vigor.
That is the problem.
It's not a lack of vigor.
That is the problem.
Yeah, so it has
Our
to
leadership
be,
has so much vigor.
Yes, exactly.
it has to be infused with wisdom and compassion,
Yeah,
right?
and it's a nice example of the intersection of the perfections.
And what that professor told her was so wonderful because it wasn't about her lack, right? It was about a way that the activity could be improved, not, now I'm talking to a C student, so there wasn't that sense of judgment in it, right?
No demeaning at all.
Yeah. Oh. So possible that wouldn't even need to be taken personally. It's just like, oh, there's a different way to study, Yeah. Did you have something?
No.
No.
Jeanette has her hand up.
Okay, Genevieve?
I'm very slow at this.
Good
Good morning.
morning.
It's such a joy to be here. I noticed a couple of things yesterday which are really helpful for me. One is whenever the word energy comes up or anything like it, vigor, energetic, I feel shame.
Oh,
I feel, oh God, this is the thing I'm supposed to be that I'm not.
oh,
And because I have such acute chronic fatigue and I hit the wall, at like 3 p.m., I'm off and done with my day. And I just feel so terrible about not being able to offer more. I feel and not being able to obviously produce more and make more money and be successful. Mostly I feel I wish I could show up for people. That's the thing that really gets me. And the other thing I noticed was um, um, a couple of my colleagues who were fired, who are on my team, I've been in touch with a lot. And I contacted the CEO of an agency that has a contract with the Department of Justice. And I was it was brash of me to write to the CEO. But I had a conversation with her once. I liked her very much. And I said, look, I have these two colleagues. They're exceptional. They were terminated just because, they hadn't been there for a year. Would you be interested in considering them? And she wrote back immediately and said, sure, send me their resumes. And so then I was able to write to, and she pays well, which is very unusual for an agency. And she's ethical. My conversation with her, she was kind. And so I was able to write to them and say, great, you said you were interested and she wants to hear it. And they were just like, oh my God, you're killing me. You're so kind. I can't believe how kind you are. And I was just like, no, I am uplifted. This is nourishing for me, for my broken heart. It's not kindness. It's really the no gift, no giver,
right.
and it was really wonderful to see how my energy rose, not industriousness, but joy about being alive.
But you also exerted a lot of energy on their behalf.
That's true, and it really drives me in a way that I don't drive for myself, but
Right.
other people's need really motivates me. I mean, I really care.
Yeah, that's one thing that can really bring forth our vigor, right? When we can see a way to take care of someone or take care of others, it just arises, it just brings energy, right? But even though you're with your fatigue condition, your general energy level is lower, it still fluctuates. There are still times when you have a little bit more, times when you have a little bit less, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, those are the things to watch for. Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you so much.
Anyone else? All right. We'll, today, it's the Dhyana Paramita. And dhyana is a Sanskrit word, which basically means meditation. When this whole movement moved to Japan, the jhana became Zen. It's the same word, basically. And Zen is the school of Buddhism that is based on meditation. That's the fundamental core practice of Zen Buddhism. So there are other schools of Buddhism where chanting is the primary practice, some where study of certain sutras is the primary practice, the Lotus Sutra, and so this school is distinguished by its central focus on jhana. But every spiritual tradition, every faith tradition has some version of meditation in it. It's very, very common. So we understand that there's some deep human need for this practice of coming into stillness and silence. So, and a kind of quality of listening, right? So even in other faith traditions where the technique might involve a sacred word that you focus on, or a piece of text that you focus on, or a mantra, or some other some other thing associated with that faith tradition, still there is this practice, and sometimes it gets suppressed. So for many years in Christianity, many, hundreds of years, it was suppressed. It was considered dangerous. And that all of your religious practice needed to be mediated through a priest who would be the authority on what was appropriate and what wasn't appropriate. And there was a sense that you were in dangerous waters if you were contemplative. And then they, developed these convents and monasteries where people could go and be contemplative in a safe container, basically, and not have ideas and ask questions, which is the troubling part of people who come into contemplation. They get to ask questions. So why priests, for example? Why aren't there any women? Questions like that are troubling, so they need to be suppressed. But all spiritual traditions have some flavor of this. I feel like meditation practice falls into two major categories. One category is what I call concentration practices. That's where you're focusing on something in meditation. And it might be focusing on the body, it might be focusing on the breath, it might be focusing on a candle flame or a flower or a sound, some sensory experience. But you're bringing your awareness and attention back. You're just returning to that focus over and over and over again. It's not a sense of you're going to be able to cling to it. It's more like it's used as an aid to be like sort of like home base you return to. You just keep returning to the breath. You get off in your thoughts and then you return to the breath. And it's that willingness to keep returning that is the actual practice. It's not the ability to cling to the particular focus of your concentration. So right away, there's this component in meditation of willingness. You have to be willing to come, sit down, stay still, be quiet, tolerate some discomfort often, So there's willingness at the heart of it. So the techniques really, really range quite widely. It might be koan, for example, in our tradition. It might be some teaching of the Dharma so that you bring yourself into stillness and you focus on impermanence, or you focus on, suffering and the nature of suffering, or you focus on the origins of suffering, but the idea is you gather your attention and you continue to bring it back to whatever the concentration practice is. You don't switch up practices. This is something that people will often do. They think, well, this breath meditation isn't working for me. I'm going to try body meditation, so don't do that in the middle of a meditation period. In fact, I wouldn't do that even. Give yourself 6 months at least with a practice, because you can't really explore it. You can't really understand it if you keep jumping around. Then it's, by definition, not concentration practice, right? So you want to establish, okay, for the next 6 months or whatever, I'm going to explore what is meditation on the breath. What is that concentration on the breath? So that you can actually deepen in that practice and not be scattered. For me, the definition of concentration is not this kind of rigid focus. It's about wholeness, like bringing the mind into wholeness so that it's not fractured and scattered. So it's almost like maybe you've got a bunch of ducklings in a basket and they're all getting out of the basket, like your job is just to gently bring them back to the basket, just keep gently bringing back your attention and awareness and your embodied experience to this concentration practice, whatever your practice is. If you are unsure what kind of practice you should be practicing, and most of you are, this is the very reason we have teachers. We have teachers so that you can go to a teacher and say, I don't know, I'm so confused. I'm in my head. I'm thinking about things all the time. And the teacher is probably going to give you some body-centered practices or some practice that will be tailored You can read lots of books about these practices, but it's not tailored to your experience. It's not tailored to exactly where you are in your practice path. So that's why a teacher is beneficial, I think, as a support and an aid in finding the practice that is going to be appropriate for you at that time. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Been there.
So in the Vipassana tradition and in the early teachings of the Buddha, meditation is divided into two styles, let's say. One of which is shamatha, which is a calming meditation, and the other of which is vipassana, which is insight. So, and those two are sometimes taught as first calming and then vipassana, or sometimes they're taught together, where your focus is calming the body, calming the breath, calming the mind. And vipassana is insight into fundamental facts of existence, let's say, like impermanence, like suffering, like emptiness, like selflessness. In our tradition, the other main form of meditation besides concentration practice is what's sometimes called shikantaza, which is open awareness practice. Or, as we often say in Zen, just sitting. And in that kind of practice, you make no manipulation of your experience whatsoever. You're not trying to direct your attention anywhere. Your thoughts are flowing through, physical sensations are flowing through, emotions are flowing through, they're unhindered. They're completely unhindered. So your mind, your heart, your body are experiencing without comment. And that's a very challenging practice. The reason we sometimes teach concentration practices first is to help people steady their minds so that they have the capacity for something so open, so unstructured as shikantaza. It is, however, in our tradition, the sense that this is the direct path or the direct expression of complete awakening. So this is why Dogen will say, coming into Zazen posture, coming fully into this present moment experience, that's already enlightenment. You're not doing it to get enlightened. You're not doing it to become awakened. You're actually already expressing it. And I sometimes, talk about this in the sense of, if you look at photos of, let's say, your doctor's childhood photos, he's a doctor. He's 9 years old. He doesn't know he's a doctor yet, right? But already the doctor is in him. Already the doctor is unfolding itself. So there's that sense of already Buddha, and it's unfolding itself. It's unfolding itself in this practice path. So when we are manipulating our experience in some way, we're trying to do something, trying to follow the breath or trying to, clear the mind. And please don't try to empty your mind. That is very counter to what it is that we teach. When you're doing something in meditation, that's not shikantaza, and there's a sense in which it's a diversion. So while it can be a helpful, supportive structure, if you're completely rattled, if you are brand new in practice, these concentration practices can be quite useful. And we return to them. It's part of our toolbox. We return to them from time to time as a way to bring ourselves back to our present moment experience. But Zen practice, what's taught is shikantaza. And if you went to some training facility or monastery in Japan, that would be it. So yeah. But however, we have found here at least that many people are helped in meditation by at least starting with a bit of structure. And the Buddha himself taught this structure. I've talked to people about this. The Anapanasati Sutta is the framework. So the Buddha gave two complete meditation instructions, training instructions. And the first one was the Satipatthana Sutta, which some people are familiar with. Very elaborated practices for training attention and awareness, and which include a very long section about meditation on death and dying and the charnel ground and what happens to your body, 5 days after you die and 100 years after you die or whatever. So, but that became problematic in the Sangha because the disciples were, as Ananda came to the Buddha and reported about this pedagogical method, they were mutilating themselves and even killing themselves because of their meditations on the repulsiveness of the body. So I think the Buddha's original teaching about this was to break down our fetishizing of the body and to make it clear that, our cravings and our desires for other bodies were not based on very sound ground. But he took that to heart and he came then back, gave a big lecture to his monks and said, meditation is about finding joy. It's about happiness. It should be making you more happy, not less happy. And so he gave them the teaching of the Anapanasati Sutta. And I'll just list it for you, but I'm going to send it out later so you'll have a copy. That's my cheat sheet. So, and it's in 4 parts, and each part has 4 instructions. So ultimately it becomes pretty easy to remember. The 4 parts are the body, feeling, which includes thoughts and emotions, mind, and dharmas. So the whole goal of this training is to bring the mind into a kind of wholeness and turn it towards some teaching. So it begins with the body and it begins with the breathing. And I usually do 3 breaths for each of these steps, but you can do whatever you want to. Breathing in long, so you're going to deliberately take a deep, deep breath. Breathing in long, one understands, I breathe in long. Breathing out long, one understands, I breathe out long. Then you're going to return to normal breathing. Breathing in short, one understands, I breathe in short. Breathing out short, one understands, I breathe out short. So then you've established sort of mindfulness of breathing. One trains. Experiencing the whole body, I shall breathe in. One trains. Experiencing the whole body, I shall breathe out. One trains. Calming bodily activity. It's not suppression. It's like, I always say it's like a parent soothing a child who's restless, like just calming. They're lying in bed, you're just like calming them, they're gonna fall asleep. Calming bodily activity, I shall breathe in. One trains. So this is a training. Calming bodily activity, I shall breathe out. Now we come to feeling. One trains. Experiencing joy, I shall breathe in. Experiencing joy, I shall breathe out. You may not be feeling particularly joyful at the moment. There may be lots of things in the way of your joy. So then you need to recall a moment of pure joy, which you certainly have had at some point in your life. Sometimes I'll remember a time when my husband, who was not my husband then, came to get me in the middle of a blizzard, and he drove halfway, and I mushed from my house walking halfway. The little village was completely deserted because of this blizzard, and we encountered each other with so much rapture. I mean, just hugged each other in the middle of this blizzard. His car was now completely stuck in snow. He was gonna have to trudge back to my house, but it was just one of those moments of just, the snow was falling and it was glistening in the light, and it was just one of those magic moments, like in the movies. That's one I sometimes return to, and you probably have a moment like that in your own life that is just filled with joy, and that it's that effervescent, energized quality, right? One trains. Experiencing happiness, I shall breathe in. Now, happiness is a quieter kind of joy, right? It's just, and it tends to be more sort of an even state, right? Experiencing happiness, I shall breathe in. You can be happy right in this moment. Experiencing happiness, I shall breathe out. One trains. At this point, you're thinking about it, right? Experiencing mental activity, I shall breathe in. Experiencing mental activity, I shall breathe out. We're already starting to think about all this, right? And then one trains, calming mental activity, I shall breathe in. One trains, calming mental activity, I shall breathe out. And then again, it's just this soothing. It's not trying to stop anything. It's not trying to thwart anything. Now we can turn to the mind. One trains, experiencing the mind, I shall breathe in. The mind is what's under all that mental activity. So you're beginning to deepen below that thought level, right? One trains, experiencing the mind, I shall breathe out. One trains, gladdening the mind, I shall breathe in. One trains, gladdening the mind, I shall breathe out. One trains, concentrating the mind. Now again, it's bringing it into wholeness. It's not cramming it into some focus, right? Just bringing it into wholeness. Concentrating the mind, I shall breathe in. One trains, concentrating the mind, I shall breathe out. One trains, liberating the mind, I shall breathe in. One trains, liberating the mind, I shall breathe out. This is the quality of mind we want to turn toward whatever it is that we are going to attend to, right? Whatever it is that we are going to study or bring into awareness, right? We now have a calm body, calm emotion state, calm mind, clear mind, and we can turn toward the next things, which are the dharmas. Now, I will say these four things that we are going to turn our mind toward could vary. I'm going to tell you the ones that the Buddha taught, but they actually could be any of the teachings, that's why it's called the dharmas, any of the teachings of the Buddha. One trains, contemplating impermanence, I shall breathe in. One trains, contemplating impermanence, I shall breathe out. When we think about impermanence, we can think about it on the micro scale. This breath is impermanent, right? This heartbeat is impermanent. Or we think on this larger scale, planets are impermanent, So the impermanence permeates everything. One trains, contemplating dispassion, I shall breathe in. One trains, contemplating dispassion, I shall breathe out. Now, for a lot of people, passion is very energizing, very enjoyable, but we have to recognize the ways in which emotion states fluctuate and often distance us from our immediate experience. The dispassion that is talked about here is not suppressing emotion, it's not suppressing thoughts. It's recognizing the liberation in not being tangled up in them. One trains, contemplating cessation, I shall breathe in. Contemplating cessation, I shall breathe out. In this case, contemplation of the cessation of suffering. So that's what we're looking for in our Buddhist teachings. One trains, contemplating letting go, I shall breathe in. One contemplates letting go, I shall breathe out. And if you only ever use that last instruction, you'd still be ahead of the game. If you could only mobilize that. I have some shortcuts, some condensed versions of this at the bottom of this. Breathing in, the body relaxes. Breathing out, the body is free. Breathing in, the heart opens. Breathing out, the heart is free. Breathing in, the mind quiets. Breathing out, the mind is free. Breathing in, I awaken. Breathing out, I am free. So that's the short form of this Anapanasati Sutta. They'll send this out, so folks will have it in their email. So it's very, very useful. But really what we want to hear is what I've invited Ellen to chat with me about. And I think almost everybody knows Ellen, right? Anybody not know Ellen? Ellen is one of our longtime practitioners. When did you start with us?
2015.
2015.
Started at AC Austin Zen Center though, maybe a year before. Still working, so going as much as I could.
So this is 10 years now.
Something like
It's your
that.
10-year anniversary.
Yeah.
You should get a pin or something.
She got a rocket suit.
But she
Just 10 years, didn't I?
She didn't come to us cold. She came to us from a long practice of Siddha yoga. yeah. And here, she's been involved in every single thing. So was one of the founders of Women in Zen, along with Kim, was one of the
And
founders.
Stephanie,
And Stephanie.
Stephanie's the original.
And the Buddhist Action Now, been very active in
I
that,
was here, yeah.
yeah, from the beginning. And now you live in Virginia
Yes,
with your grandchildren
yes.
nearby, which is, was our heart's desire. You've served on council, you've done so many things, been part of so many things in the Sangha, teaching, giving Dharma talks, and so we're so really grateful. And I wanted to hear a little bit, because I'm not so familiar with this, can you tell us a little bit about your Siddha Yoga practice? What is that?
Didn't expect that. There was a mantra, there was a guru. There was very much a focus on self, which was a big difference. But it wasn't like the little self, it was the great self.
Right.
Which led me to an exploration of, then I did do some, long story, I did some exploration with Buddhism and loved it. In fact, was a little bit involved with the Tibetan group for a while. And so I did a big study on where is the emptiness in Siddha Yoga, and I actually found it. I won't go into it,
Right.
but it was not stressed. The guru did encourage daily sitting. I actually got a little bit too obsessed with must sit every day, that kind of thing. But as I sat, I actually discovered some of what shikantaza is what I discovered, a more embodied presence. And then I still stuck it out with Siddha Yoga for 10 more years. But then I read Suzuki Roshi and said, I need this is where I need to be.
Yeah. So you already had a long practice. And that, so when you came in, it was pretty obvious that you were pretty established in terms of meditation. You knew what that was and what it was.
Knew what it was.
Yeah, knew what it was. Yeah. So I had a question that I think is something that comes up often for people. And I've written it out because I want to make sure that I say this in the way that I want to, which is, I know you have quite a bit of trauma in your background. And we caution folks who have experienced trauma to take care with this practice, which can evoke memories and experiences from that painful past. On the other hand, meditation can provide an environment of care and trust where a person can safely rest and heal from old wounds. So I'm curious about how your practice may have helped you, or whether the old traumas did resurface and cause difficulties in meditation for you.
That's a really good question. For one thing, everybody who's had trauma needs therapy, really good therapy, really good and useful therapy. Even when I was in Siddha Yoga, now in Siddha Yoga, visions are encouraged.
So visualization.
Visualizations are encouraged, and I mean, you don't make them up, but you know, you're kind of open to that kind of thing. And you know, I remember having a vision of, this might make me want to cry, of not repeating, some images of my father and like some deep forgiveness of him. Yeah, and some feeling of connection in a humanness, a realization of some humanness there.
So it's still moving you.
You trick me, Peg.
Well, I think it's important because it's not often talked about. And when people have trauma, it's very tender, you know? And opening those places can be quite painful in meditation. And they can re-experience traumas, even. So because I knew you had this experience, I wanted you to say a little bit about what that would have been like for you, and that capacity to find the humanness and some forgiveness in it is really important.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, and we stress the importance of therapy as a complement when you are going to undertake a meditation practice if you haven't.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that we have Haikomi here.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good thing, a really good compliment, and I think that we're so fortunate. I mean, I do think that groups that don't include an element like that, they're just missing something very useful for people. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just so happy to hear you talk about it a little bit because, but we don't often. And there is a kind of warning label. There's a whole, area of research around the harm that meditation sometimes can cause if people don't have some grounding and support when they have this kind of background. Yeah. So we want to be mindful of that, and we want to share that understanding, so that people who have that experience recognize the need for therapy and support. Yeah, so I thank you very much for talking about that. I also wanted to know what has been most important in meditation for you.
Oh my goodness, most important, honesty.
Say more about that.
When I first started meditating out in rural Kentucky, I was not living a life that was true to myself. And that just fell apart. Just fell apart. And I would be, I lived in this beautiful rural area. Oh, I need a Kleenex. Somebody. Thank you. Anyway, I was, sitting out in the woods and meditating, and there was this, and I did have this one little instruction because my partner had one little meditation session instruction. He said, "You focus on awareness." So I'd say, be out there focusing on awareness, and then I just couldn't be dishonest anymore with myself. I didn't belong in this relationship, and I needed to stop smoking pot. And with that, everything fell apart. I took my little boys and we moved back to Austin. And so that was traumatic, but I can hardly imagine, the Band-Aid needed to be ripped off there. And so I had these big issues, and I had to get honest about the big things. And then as ongoingly, it keeps me honest, more honest, as honest as I can be. I really need to talk to somebody. I need to talk to her about that, or that's what needs to happen, or just not necessarily on the cushion, but this increased openness keeps me more honest.
So I'm curious, in our assembly here, how many people have had the experience in meditation of that kind of recognition, I have to change what I'm doing? I definitely.
So great.
Yeah, where things just sort of, it's just crystal clear, something has to change. Might be something small, might be something, like large, or like me thinking, oh, my academic career has ended. I am leaving the campus. Yeah, right. And sometimes it's that quality of honesty, like really getting honest with yourself, that shows you, oh, this needs to change, or that needs to change. Yeah, and it's almost effortless then to make that change, right?
It's painful.
It's painful.
It's painful, but it has to happen.
It has to happen.
You can't do anything else.
That's right. You can't not do it.
Right.
Yeah. That's my experience anyway. Yeah. Well, I think we have some time for folks to ask questions if you have questions. for Ellen or for me. Or if you have a reflection, yes.
Ellen, I'm
Yes, Joan.
just so inspired by what meditation has done for you and the direction it's given you and the strength. That's just wonderful to hear. I really appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you, Joan.
Anne,
I often ask myself, and so I'll ask you, do you feel like the meditation made this change for you, or do you think it was the passage of time and experience and just growing
Oh,
as a
no, it
person?
was definitely the meditation. I could have gone on like that forever, you know, making various terrible decisions. You know, it was definitely the meditation.
yeah. Joel,
Back when you were describing the sutra, there was a point, and I can't remember the first word, it was like relinquishment or,
letting go.
and then, there was letting go, and the previous one,
Oh, cessation?
cessation. So what's, and so I'm asking about that because the clarity brought you to a point of cessation with some habits, right? So, but what's the difference between cessation and that other word that will not stick in my mind?
Letting go. Letting go.
The difference between cessation and
And letting go, sorry.
letting go.
And letting go.
Yeah. Yeah, well, one is accepting the cessation of all things.
Mhm.
And then it's allowing everything to go, right?
Mhm.
So everything that's in you that's holding on,
Mhm.
right? It's one thing to see, oh yeah, this ends, right?
I see.
It's another thing to be able to let go. So Mary Beth's friend, her daughter, she has to accept the cessation of her daughter. Her daughter has ceased to be. The letting go is another whole lifetime long process, right? That's an extreme example, but that's what we're facing, yeah.
Thank you.
Sandra online.
Sandra?
Thank you, Ellen, for what you are sharing. So what come to me is I really resonate what you are saying about what meditation can make you do this different change, because in my own experience is in meditation, in that space of silence, you know, where the mind is a little bit for a second, I can have these insights in me that tell me, okay, do this, do that, and I just follow that. And it's just in those moments.
So that allows space for the wisdom, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Show up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Yeah, Mary Beth.
Yeah, and sort of like that, but one of the things that I noticed with meditation, for me coming from trauma background too, is just the ability for my nervous system to calm. And my question is, did you have that notice of your nervous system calming so that you could get to where it is that you are now?
Well, yes, I loved it immediately. It was really nice being in the woods too, by the way. That's a nice place to start. Yes, I loved the silence. I loved, I had two babies, you know, and living in a very rugged, living off the land circumstances, you know, and yeah, then I could just be really quiet. I took to it like I was born for it, you know, not that it was easy, but, you know, I did the same thing everybody does.
Yeah.
Body hurts, can't sit long,
Yeah.
but when I could do it, I really loved it. And it was calming, and I hadn't thought of it like that at all. Thank you.
It does have that effect of regulating the nervous system. And
Yeah.
that can be very helpful, because that's what's gotten disorganized in a
Yeah.
way.
I mean, it took me years to realize that's why I kept coming back. I didn't realize, I just kept doing it, because my intuition kept saying, keep sitting. I realize now, years later, it was because it was this habit I was forming to regulate my nervous system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and all those stress-producing hormones, cortisol, are flooding you, especially if you've had trauma. And meditation is showering the amygdala with GABA, stress-relieving hormone. So it's actually gratifying in that way. Yeah. Yeah, Jess.
So Ellen, you're practicing here in Austin and then moved to Virginia. And so you've had the experience of being here for a long time and having your being in person in your meditation practice. Now you're in Virginia and, come in remotely. So I'm curious, having having this unique experience, when it comes to your meditation practice, how has your meditation practice been influenced by the different environments?
Oh, that's a really good question. It's been really beneficial. They influence each other because this is unique. This is unique in its focus on relational practice, which is the Buddhist teaching, but it's really big here. It's a really big focus here. And so it's everywhere. It's in everywhere you go. But when I walked into a different Sangha, I noticed it. It was a different feel.
She's kind of a glutton for practice. So she has other sanghas she's cheating on us with.
I'm cheating.
Because she just can't get enough practice with what they offer.
But no, I'm here online, but I go in person to Richmond Zen. And gosh, I was saying to somebody, and maybe in my council, I really like the intersection of, I've really enjoyed experiencing the more traditional, but it's definitely, for me, it's infused with this. And I think also it affects the other people I practice with. And there's stories I could tell you about that, but I don't know. I was telling Peg and I'm an ambassador for Ramada.
Ambassador for the Dharma.
For the Dharma.
Yeah. Well, Rosemarie, last question.
Sure. Thank you. Ellen, I have a question for you and then I have a comment. So you have been such a mentor to many of us through all the activities that Peg mentioned, the women in Zen, Zazen and Share, our midday Wednesday meeting. And I wondered how that experience, those experiences have impacted your practice.
So much. It started out, Anne was the only person who was leading the Wednesday night program. And I felt sorry for her. And I was practically brand new. And I said, surely giving a little 10-minute talk could be easy. And it was so hard. And what Peg, because I didn't know anything, and what Peg told me, you don't have to know anything, you have to connect. And that almost makes me want to cry. because it doesn't have anything to do with what you know. Yeah, I mean, it does. It's nice to know a little bit. Helpful. It's helpful, very helpful to know a little bit. But what it's about is connecting. And so that's like my little mantra, I guess.
Only connect.
So I know that was the last question, but I want to say that Ellen also volunteered early on with orientation when you used to do the orientation all by yourself, but when you invited others in the Sangha to participate, she was one of the earliest people.
That's right.
And she said something which I think about every time I walk in the door, is that people who come to orientation should leave knowing that they are welcome, and the people here are on their side, that they don't have to be worried that they're gonna be judged, anything like that, but just that phrase, they should know that people here are on their side.
Yeah, it's an important reminder, right? We're on your side. We're on the side of everyone who walks through the door.
It doesn't always feel like the case in groups, you know?
So I hear. This is why I primarily participate here. Yes, thank you so much for,
I'm sorry, so I had a comment that went along with my question, and the comment was in speaking about trauma and practice, that for me, it hasn't always, sometimes it's the calming effect of my nervous system, but other times it's bringing forth a really deep connection. And it brings forth a lot of, and Stephanie, last year, I know I was sitting right next to you and I just couldn't stop crying. And, but at the end of that is real liberation. So I just wanted to add that part, you know, sometimes it looks like that and feels like that, and people shouldn't be worried.
yeah, that's great. That's a great reminder. Yeah, there's liberation at the heart of it, of this practice. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Bye, Anne.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Okay, yes, we're going to wrap up. Timekeeper.
Prepare for service.